Well, I got time to take a spin around Olivia.
Let's take the spin.
Let's go look.
You want to go on the right?
Okay, we have Dennis Lancaster in the meeting here with the bicycle community interest and pedestrian safety. We've got Tom Sims, board representative, and we have Scott Jarvis. Your title?
I'm in the city of Henderson. I am our bicycle program coordinator, but also in my other day job, I am one of the lead engineers in engineering design.
We love that about you. Thanks for being here. Tour of the Tuscany roadways, the Olivia Parkway Loop. Right now we're coming out of Chimera. And
while you own the streets and everything in here, you do have public businesses, and so you have allowed public access. But that does not diminish your rights whatsoever as the private owner to do what you deem is best fit. Now, within that, obviously, what we do in the city is there's several published standards that we go by, and we always recommend that other folks follow those as well. But once again, that is a recommendation. My understanding, and your attorneys could speak more clearly on it, is you are private, you are gated, you own it. What you do, you take ownership of and liability with, but you still have a lot of flexibility with what you want to do.
Okay, and so I stop right here. You know, our streets are this wide. Like in here wouldn't be enough room for a bike lane.
Depends upon, you have a lot of pavement out here, and when this was originally came in through the design, there was obviously a concept presented, and that's what this resulted in.
The other thing that I see is there's legal in front of the house parking available at certain hours, like daytime hours. So bike lane,
at least 36 feet of pavement. You have one lane in each direction, a center turn lane, and then parking on the one side. So you're probably actually 40 plus feet of pavement.
Right.
It's up to your community, and you can bring in, engineers for different perspectives of, do you want to keep the center turn lane? Because that is at least 10 feet, probably closer to 12 feet of usable space that you could repurpose for your community. I agree with you that if you keep parking on one side of the road, it's not a traditional thing to run the bike lane up the center of the parking lane, because obviously you have conflicts there. You can't have a parked car and put a bike through the middle of it.
Right.
You can put a bike lane adjacent to parked cars. Now, the recommended minimum width of a bike lane is 5 feet. You all know there's pros and cons. You put a bike lane next to a parked car, the guy in the car opens up the door right in front of the bike, you have a bad situation.
so we need the 3 feet.
A 3 feet buffer is an ideal thing to do. It's called a door zone, so that somebody can open up a door and not hit the cyclist. It's not required. It is a good practice. In this area, you're posted at 25 miles an hour, and looking at the volumes of cars out here right now, obviously right now there's hardly any, as you can see in the camera. So,
I guess what I'm saying
if you don't mind pulling over a minute. So, like in this section here, if you were to do away with the turn lane, because I mean, how much traffic do we really have that we really necessitate a left turn lane, right?
I think this is the only one in the complex, by the way.
Yeah, but if you were to, bring that in and still have like a 2 or 3 foot barrier, so to speak, in the middle to separate traffic, then it gives us a lot more room to work with for parking on either side, and that the bike lane and probably the buffer, I don't know, without measuring it. And like in here, but then we do have places where it narrows, and we'd have to take a look at, I guess, probably eliminating parking and making sure that we have room for the bike lane all the way around the loop, right?
Well, I can tell you eliminating parking will not be very popular.
No, and yeah, I get that. Like here, you only got one house on the left. Here, I don't think that he would care if, there's no parking here anyway, for the most part. I mean, not very often, but if you took away his parking here, or reduced it, I don't think he had a problem.
Park in front of his house because there's wheel marks on the curb. But what I see for a bike lane, to make a bike lane
isn't parking.
Yeah, there's no parking, so it's whittled down to essentially 3 lanes.
A couple of critical things. The closer the kids are on the sidewalk, that's the closer they are to the cars trying to back out of the driveways. So there's no buffer between a car backing out on the sidewalk, and there's plenty of studies that show that it's actually safer for everyone to be on the road when everybody behaves appropriately. That being said, you look at, okay, if you want to add bike lanes, what width? Well, 5 foot is the recommended preferred minimum.
Is that
You can actually go down to 4 feet, but that's typically reserved only for like pinch points where you have constraints, you don't want to do it. Because 4 feet doesn't give a cyclist or a car very elbow room if somebody makes a mistake and you need to protect yourself before the car and the bike come in contact with each other, which we never want to happen. So I would recommend you start with how much pavement do you have, and just start drawing that on paper and say, all right, if I need 5 feet for a bike lane versus, you got to decide how wide a travel lanes you want.
Well, I always thought here in Tuscany, with the speed limit being 25 miles an hour, that the biker would just get out into the traffic lane and be another vehicle.
That is allowed by state law. When a cyclist is on the road, there is a car. Now, you just very quickly you do the physics. If the cyclist weighs 180 and the car weighs 6,000 pounds...
Oh, I get that. But the speed limit throughout is 25 miles an hour or less.
There's a device, a striping device called a Shero. And you put a Shero down, it's a symbol that you put on the road that basically says, okay, bikes and cars coexist. We have Sheros in a couple locations within the city. There are a couple locations within the valley.
What does that device look like?
It's just a painted stripe.
It's just painted. It's a painted message onto the pavement.
Yes, which basically says bikes you can ride in the lane. Now, based upon the
And
national,
how many? It's go so many feet. You put that down and go another.
Ingress and egress for the kids for school.
so these other manuals that I'm referencing, they're not standards. They're recommended best practices. And so that's where you have a lot of flexibility how you can apply them with what's called engineering judgment. And so going back, for example, to Sheros. Shero is a recommendation that does occur that you can use in locations with low speeds and low traffic volumes, which basically, as we said, tells the bike, take the lane. You can use the entire lane. Cars,
Yeah, you don't have to hover next to the curb. You can be out in the street.
They're great things in the right location. We actually have them around City Hall in most cases. On a street such as this, typical residential street throughout the city of Henderson, we don't stripe bike lanes because it's kind of a given. You're in a low-speed urban environment, you don't need them. Out here in Olivia Parkway and what have you, it's slightly different, so that's where there could be value of putting in a bike lane. Now with the Sheros, we're careful where we put them because we all know there's different types of cyclists. There's the fast, there's the slow, there's the mom, the dad, the old kids, the younger kids. You have to ask yourself as a community, do you want a less confident cyclist out in the middle of the road with cars behind them waiting on them? Or would you prefer to have that less confident cyclist more to the edge of the road in a traditional bike lane?
I think the natural thought process of a cyclist is to be close to the curb. You know, as he's riding, he's close to the edge of the road. In case a vehicle comes up and wants to get around him, and we have wide roads so that can happen.
Out on your major roads, yes. I mean, just looking at this roadway is set up for traditional bike lane. The one we're staring at, via Alatore.
Right.
That's more appropriate for traditional bike lane. The street that we're sitting on, via Gandolfi, embedded in residential,
Probably not.
you probably don't need anything. Because the idea being is people going up and down the street here, lower speed, if a car comes to you, they just go around you, you pull over a little, just everybody is polite and take their space. That's traditional to a neighborhood.
You want to answer Tom's remark with the instance that a person is going to continue to travel straight and not be in the furthest rightmost lane, the importance of having a bike lane so they don't get caught up in the right turn lane?
Great question, and there's two parts of that. What we teach cyclists and how cyclists are supposed to act in the state of Nevada and actually throughout the world. Cyclists, when you're on the road, you're a car. You're a small car, but you're a car. So if you're going straight, you stay right. If you're taking a left turn, you put on your blinker, which is your left arm, and you look for a gap in traffic, and you move over like you're taking a left turn, just like a car would. Cars want cyclists to act like other cars, because then they understand each other. When cyclists are being crazy and jumping up and down curbs and doing crazy things, that's when cars get nervous, because they don't know where that crazy bike's going. So in terms of a bike lane, when you come up to a location where there's a right turn pocket, there's certain striping that you can do to identify, okay, bike, this is where the bike lane moves over, versus here's where's a right turn pocket for a car to get into, and there's a weaving movement. So there are plenty of national standards and national recommendations for how to address various situations. Once again, it just comes back to your community as how much pavement width do you have, how would you like to utilize it, and what users do you want to accommodate? I mean, you're always going to have cars.
Right. So our main access roadways, for lack of a better term, is from this back gate out to Olivia Parkway, and then of course the Olivia Parkway loop that we've taken twice. Or once, I mean.
Okay, so this is a good example. The kids coming across here from the opposite side, walking home from school or to school. Would we put a crosswalk here on the right, Scott, or on the left?
Comes down to right here, you have an intersection with 4 handicap ramps. By state of Nevada law, this is a crosswalk, even though it's not striped. I mean, the young man who just crossed in front of us, he went from that access ramp to this access ramp. He was in a crosswalk. That is the way it's perceived by the police department. Whether or not you want to go to the next level and put down stripes, there are some national studies out there that identify when you should do that, about how much traffic you should have before you do it. And the reason for those studies is when it comes to how many signs you put up and how many markings you put up, you hit critical mass where you put too much down and people ignore it.
Yeah, there is multiple reasons for doing that. For the kids, it's train them. It's safe to cross here. Don't cross like right by the gate where those other kids were crossing. Right there.
You are touching upon a challenge that hits every community. You have places where you want cars to go, you have places you want pedestrians to go, you have places where you want bikes to go. There's still the human element that individuals are going to do what they want. So if you put a crosswalk in a location that you think it's the best place for people to cross, but they don't agree with you, unless you have a physical barrier, they're going to cross in the other location. So that is something that our traffic department of the city is very aware of, that they're very cautious of changes we make to our own communities, because they realize the human factor, people are still going to do what they want to do. But that's why we like the on-roadway facilities. It's the safest location for the cyclist, but it also gives you the greater variability of speeds.
What exactly?
It's think like a peaked roof like this.
It's a chevron.
It's a chevron. So you got 2 chevrons, and then usually there's the symbol of a bike. It's basically saying bike go here, and the chevron saying you're allowed to go straight down the road.
Okay.
You have multiple options available to you of whatever you think is going to work best for your community. It's like everything else.
We have 2.3 miles of Olivia Parkway Loop.
Mm-hmm. Of that 2.3 miles, as you look at the different treatments that you could put out there, there's a cost associated with it. There are paints versus tape versus very fancy paint there's polyurea, there's epoxy, there's all sorts of stuff. They did have different pros and cons. The things that we tried to do in Henderson, because it goes back to the manual uniform traffic control devices, we use material, because we're required by law, that has minimum retroreflectivity values, and they actually have glass beads in it, so it catches up the headlights at night. Now, even within that, there's quite a spectrum of, you buy this product, it might last a couple years. You buy this product, it might last half a dozen years. You buy another product, it might last 10 to 15 years, depending upon how many cars drive across it. Price escalates. So it's a question of how much money do you have up front versus how often do you want to come in and refresh it and maintain it. And that, I'd imagine for a community, that's a very big discussion. How much money to spend up front, and then how often is that reoccurring cost to go in and refresh it?
What public funding is available that might help us out?
Within a private gated community, I'm not aware of any public funding since you are...
NVDOT said that we would be, because we are in the state of Nevada.
Did they talk about a grant or something you could put in for?
Yes, absolutely. That we missed the March 1st because our board had been disbanded and hadn't been quite put back together again during that time period to make that application happen under the deadline. But I was told that we certainly are eligible to work toward the 2021, and that with your advisement, we're going to be able to plan and put it together, and it does take up to a year to really put it together properly.
Okay. Great news then.
So other than the grant, it was alluded to that we would have some help from the state if we put it together correctly, and that came from Carson City.
Great. Whatever grants they have available to you. I'm just within the city of Henderson. The funding sources that I am familiar with, we are restricted of using our funding within public right-of-way. As long as all the residents have agreed to or bought off on the concept of if you remove the center turn lane, you're not putting down a brand new surface. You are patching all the holes from popping buttons off. Which is done. We do it in the city on occasion.
That's an important detail.
It's all about managing expectations.
In other words, when you take one of those buttons off, it takes part of the asphalt with it.
Correct. That's absolutely right. Because that button is glued to the asphalt.
It is epoxied.
It's coming up and it's bringing a little divot with it.
It's going to bring the asphalt with it, so there'd be patching to do.
Yep.
And there's a lot of buttons out in the middle of Olivia.
And you guys need to look at your roadways right now. You can tell they're turning white, at least right here in front of the golf course. So turning white means it's starting to dry out, just like your skin.
Yep.
I don't know what your guys' schedule is for pavement maintenance. Are you guys coming in with a Type 1 slurry, a Type 2 slurry, a PMEs? You have anything planned in the next couple of years? Because
we do. We have currently there's a reserve that is being studied, because we're just moving out of a declarant or a developer controlled community to a complete homeowner controlled community.
That is a great opportunity of whatever your roadway maintenance cycle is. If you're going to make changes to the striping, that's the time to do it.
That's why I thought I'd attend this meeting.
Yep, you're right on track. Yeah, we in Henderson, we do not like to go and restripe a roadway if we know we're coming out for maintenance in a couple of years.
Right.
Because maintenance destroys the striping, and we don't want to pay that cost twice. Now, something you need to know going in, there is a concern in the Vegas Valley, and it has to do with the oil and the type of rock we use to build roads, that striping doesn't stay white. I mean, that's going to be anybody who's driven around town and seen crosswalks, they go down brilliant white, and then 2 months later they're dingy gray. Right. That happens. That's why that retroreflectivity value with the beads in there to pick up the car lights at night is so critical. Yeah. And that's going to be the same thing is when you put down bike lane stripes out here, they're going to look great until people start driving over them and backing in and out of driveways. They're going to go dingy gray and brown, black
And you're right.
very quickly.
Within a couple of months, the crosswalk we did up by the front gate,
It changes quick. It doesn't.
you couldn't even see it after 2 months.
You still have the retroreflectivity at night, but during the day it's dingy. In terms of a cyclist, it's still a good thing because it still identifies the space. But if you have folks who say, well, wait a minute, I want this bright white, the only way to keep it bright white is go out there and power wash it. And that is not a very cost-effective procedure.
Okay, gang.